Today, we're making 3 recipes that will turn plain old tofu into a saucy sensation that will get even your broccoli begging for a dip. Why not make saucy chicken or saucy beef? Well, because tofu is low in saturated fat, has 0 cholesterol, will help with your heart health, is a great source of protein, iron, and calcium, and is the perfect product to absorb all of the saucy flavors. Get ready, because today things are about to get a little saucy. Let's start with a healthier twist of orange chicken and make orange tofu. You'll start by cooking brown rice. I just put mine in the Instant Pot. If you can find super firm tofu, that's amazing. Then you don't have to press it, but extra firm or even just firm, you'll definitely want to press first. I bought this tofu press off of Amazon and it is linked below, and something that is worthwhile investing if you feel like you are going to be making tofu more often. Now, it is not necessary. You could easily just take a cutting board on top, a cutting board on bottom, put something heavy on top like a 5 or 10 pound weight and press it that way. Otherwise, this press is kind of awesome. Again, we're in tofu 201 right now, so we're gonna use the more advanced techniques like this press. Perfect. And I'll let that sit for a couple minutes. While we wait for the tofu to be pressed, we'll add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Again, I like to use light salt. 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and then 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. And we'll mix all of that together. And we'll take our tofu out of the press. And you can see, you'll drain all the extra liquid and then take it out. Okay, let's cube it in the typical cubed tofu fashion. I used to think tofu was disgusting. Especially like this cubed, oh, I would never have tried it. But over time, it's amazing how your taste buds change. And when you're willing to try new things, I actually love it now. But it definitely takes some getting used to. And you have to have it cooked right, which is what I'm showing you today. These perfect little squares. And then we'll place the tofu in the cornstarch. Well, let's mix that around. And I'll place it in my air fryer. Nice and spread out evenly. And we'll put it in at 400 for about 10 minutes. And we'll check on it after the first 10 minutes. While the tofu is cooking, let's make the sauce. And we'll add 1/2 cup of the orange juice concentrate and 1/2 cup of water. We want about 1/2 tablespoon of grated fresh ginger root. Then we'll add about 3 to 4 tablespoons of maple syrup. Add 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. You can also use white vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then we'll whisk in 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is about all I have left. We'll whisk that in. Once that's nice and incorporated, we will turn on the heat. All right, let's turn on that heat, and then it will come to a boil to thicken up. That is nice and thick. Look at that. I added an additional 10 minutes to the tofu, but I think it is done now. So it's about 15 minutes total. If you're in a hurry, the 10 minutes would probably be fine, honestly. Look at that, that's perfect. Nice and crispy is what you want. Okay, let's add the tofu to the sauce. We'll mix that around. I'm so excited to try this. I know it's a little hot, but I love the flavor of orange chicken. And so the orange tofu is just as good. That sauce is what makes this so yummy. And as long as you can get past the tofu texture, honestly, you'll love it too. The tofu is perfectly crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. It's a really, really yummy dish. Just gonna try it. It's hot. It's hot.
So good.
It's good? Try this one out for sure. Let's make tofu with peanut sauce. Here's a fancy tofu tip. Of course, you can just buy your regular tofu, take it out of the package, press it, and then make the recipes I'm about to show you. And that works great. Or you can take your tofu and place it in the freezer and then let it thaw overnight, and then you can use it the next day. Now let me show you the difference between these 2 tofus, one that's been frozen and one that has not. The frozen tofu has a more sponge-like texture than the tofu that has not been frozen. And that makes it so it can absorb more of the sauces. First things first, we gotta press the tofu so that we can take out all of that excess liquid and so it can absorb all of these delicious sauces. Again, there's many ways to press your tofu. I just like these little contraptions because it makes my life easier. But of course, you can take just a cutting board and then a towel on the bottom, a towel on top, and place another cutting board on top, and then a 10-pound weight, or you can buy a tofu press. And you can feel a little fancy with that tofu press. All right, let's let that sit. While the tofu is pressing, let's make the rice. 5 cups for my family of 8. I always rinse my rice first before I add water. 5 cups of rice will be about 7 cups of water because I've rinsed it, it's already pretty wet. High pressure, 23 minutes in the Instant Pot. Next, we'll make the marinade for the tofu. So this is what the tofu will marinate in and then cook in. So it's 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. This is totally optional. You do not have to use the oil, but you can use 1 tablespoon of sesame oil just to bring in more flavor. It's the only oil I tend to use because of the flavors that it brings in. We'll do 1 tablespoon of fresh ginger. I'm not even gonna peel the ginger this time. I'm gonna grate it here. Remember, it is totally edible, all parts of that ginger. It's the only thing I use my cheese grater for these days is grating ginger. We'll do 1 clove minced garlic. We'll mix all of that together. And now let's cut our tofu. We'll drain the liquid. Now there's many different ways to cut your tofu, and you can do the typical cubes. Today, I'm going to do more of like a square. So we'll just cut the tofu in half and then thin slices. See all of that texture? And let's marinate the tofu. Let's get it so both sides, it instantly absorbs so much of that. It soaked all of that up. And so if you are using the frozen tofu like I am, you may need to add an extra little bit of soy sauce and vinegar just to give more of that sauce because it's soaking it up so fast, just like a sponge. Next, we'll get the veggies ready. So this is just frozen broccoli. Take the broccoli, spread it out, and then add your seasonings as desired. I always love garlic powder, onion powder, salt. This is light salt. I'm pretty generous on the salt, knowing that this is also light salt, so it's gonna be less in sodium. And finally, I love the taste of nutritional yeast on my broccoli, but this is optional. We'll set the oven to 450, and even while it's preheating, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there. Since this is frozen, we wanna give it some time to thaw out. That'll take anywhere between 15 to 20 to even 30 minutes. I always just check on it and make sure that it's crispy the way I like it. Next up, we'll take about 1 to 2 tablespoons of either cornstarch or arrowroot powder. And I'm gonna place it just on a baking dish. You can use any type of plate for this. Just wanna spread out the cornstarch or arrowroot powder so it's nice and even. And then we'll take the tofu and just make sure that it's nice and coated in that cornstarch. This is why I like the bigger tofu pieces. It makes this go a lot faster. And maybe I should have worn an apron. I'm gonna pour the sauce over it all, whatever's left over, and then we'll put it in at 400 for 10 minutes to start. Now it is time for the peanut sauce. So this is a half of a cup of peanut butter. I'm actually doubling the recipe because I love the sauce and we're making things saucy. Then it will be 1/4 cup of soy sauce. Of course, you can use tamari or anything, any gluten-free version if you need to. 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then optional, but you can do anywhere between 2 to 4 teaspoons of sesame oil. Again, this is optional, but if you like the flavor, it does add some flavor. Then you'll add 1/4 cup of hot water, and that will help to mix everything together. And then let's stir. Obviously, if you have a blender, that's ideal. This will make everything go easier, but you can definitely do this by hand. Okay, I'm checking on the tofu. The ones on the edge are about done, but the ones in the middle could use a little more time, so we'll just give it a couple more minutes. Tofu is now done. It took about 15 minutes on 400. It's nice and crispy. Look at that, so yummy. Broccoli is now done. You can see it just got a little crispy. It's perfect. Let's put it all together. So we added the rice and the broccoli. And we'll add the tofu, and then we'll drizzle that delicious peanut sauce over. You can also add some sweet chili sauce. This tofu with the peanut sauce, it is so good. I love the texture of that frozen, pre-frozen tofu. It's nice and crispy. It's so good on its own, but then you add the peanut sauce on top of it. Holy cow. Oh my gosh, it's yummy. You need to try this one. So saucy, really good. Seriously, the broccoli is just dying to dip in it. Next up, let's make teriyaki tofu. This is extra firm, but if you can actually find super firm tofu, you don't have to press it. It's awesome. I find it at Walmart, but it's not at my local grocery store, and honestly, sometimes it's just easier to go local than drive a half an hour to Walmart. So here's the extra firm, and extra firm you have to press, but if you ever buy super firm, it's a lazy man's intro into tofu. You don't need to press it. While that's pressing, we're gonna mix about a tablespoon of soy sauce and about a tablespoon of cornstarch. I'll be honest, I add a little bit more, but of soy sauce. We'll mix this together. Of course, you can use arrowroot powder instead of cornstarch. Next, we'll take the tofu out, and today, instead of cutting it into your typical pieces, I'm gonna tear it into little chunks, just to create a different texture, kind of like chicken would be. It also goes by faster. All right, and then we will let it sit in that sauce for a second and get it all coated evenly. Tofu's delicate, so be careful. Mine's starting to fall apart a little bit more into pieces, but that's okay. And again, you can bake this on parchment paper for about 20 to 25 minutes at about 375 degrees, or I'm just gonna air fry it because it saves time. That's why I love the air fryer. Spread it out evenly. And then we'll place it in the air fryer for 10 minutes at 400 degrees. Secretly, I cook pretty much everything in my air fryer at 400 degrees for 10 minutes and then just kind of check on it. While the tofu's cooking, let's get saucy. Let's make the sauce. All right, we'll start with a half of a cup of water, and I'm just gonna add the rest to my measuring cups here. So this is 1/4 of a cup of soy sauce. Then we have 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, 1 inch fresh ginger. We're gonna do the whole grating ginger thing again. Fresh ginger makes such a big difference. So yummy. Next, we have 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Now you can use coconut sugar, or you can also use maple syrup. And then 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And lastly, about 3 cloves of garlic. You can also use sesame oil in here as well to bring that sesame oil flavor, just a dash. About a teaspoon or 2. So I got this tiny little blender at 5 and Below. We're gonna use it to blend all this up because just with the ginger, the garlic cloves, it is nice just to have a little blender to blend it all together, and with all of that maple syrup. Not maple syrup, ha! All of that brown sugar. Ready? Will it work? It's out of batteries. Seriously, it's out of batteries. Ah! All right, well, that's charging for a second. Let's take out the tofu. This looks and tastes just like chicken. At least my kids think it tastes like chicken. Maybe not your kids, but my kids do. It's so yummy. Oh, there we go. Not too bad for a 5 and Below purchase, as long as it's charged. And we'll place it back in, just so it'll be easier. All right, next you'll take your stir-fry veggies. I'm gonna use frozen zucchini just because that's what I have on hand, but any veggies work for this, any type of veggies you wanna stir-fry. Then you'll add the sauce. We're gonna cook those veggies in the sauce for just a little bit until the sauce starts to thicken, then we'll add the tofu. Definitely still see the garlic chunks, but that's okay. Maybe that blender didn't work so well. I have my Vitamix, but I didn't wanna put like a little bit of sauce in it, so if you have any good recommendations, let me know in the comments. Perfect. Now let's add in the tofu. Then we'll turn off the heat. Yum. Time for the taste test. I think my favorite's definitely the peanut sauce. This is a really good teriyaki tofu stir fry. It's awesome. Sweet and salty, has all those yummy flavors. It's so good topped with green onions. It works with any vegetables. This is a great recipe. Now all 3 of the recipes today were inspired by my friend Faith with Faithful Plateful, and I'll put the links to the recipes below. Also, she is one of our recipe developers for our plant-wise cookbooks. So if you love these recipes, you'll definitely love all the recipes in our cookbooks as well. We have seasonal cookbooks for spring, for summer, for fall, with all of your plant-based needs, and ones that fit more of a family, something that my kids would eat, right? Not too fancy, you have all the ingredients in your home. That's the way I like to cook. If you like these recipes, make sure to check out all of my other videos where I show you how easy and simple and delicious it can be to eat more plants.